Arthur Schopenhauer is not really interested in political philosophy. His main work, The World as Will and Representation, deals with politics only sparingly. The work is focused on metaphysics, ethics, and aesthetics, things which are, in Schopenhauer's view, the true objects of philosophy. He liked to paraphrase Henry David Thoreau, who advises us not to read the times, but the eternities. Different systems of government come and go, but metaphysics and ethics, these are eternal. Schopenhauer saw countless revolutions and wars in his lifetime, most notably in his native Germany as well as in neighboring France, and he always maintained his principle that politics is not the business of the philosopher. Nevertheless, when we look at the writings of his in some more detail, we can work out a picture of what Schopenhauer thought good government should be. In short, Schopenhauer was a monarchist who believed in limited government. Let's take a look at his reasons why. If you're familiar with Schopenhauer's main philosophy, then you know Schopenhauer didn't have a high opinion of his fellow man. In fact, he is fond of quoting the Latin phrase homo homini lupus, meaning that man is like a wolf to his fellow man. In other words, man is a cruel beast. The phrase is made famous by Thomas Hobbes, who in his seminal work of political philosophy, Leviathan, argued the need of a powerful absolute state to enforce the social contract. In other words, a strong sovereign who makes sure we all behave ourselves. Because without this strong sovereign, we'd quickly devolve to a state of war of all against all. Schopenhauer shares at least the starting point of Hobbes, namely the idea that fundamentally humans are cruel creatures who, if not held in check, would soon destroy each other and civilization as a whole. From this Hobbesian perspective, Schopenhauer expounds on his idea of the function of the state. The state is nothing more than an institution for protection, which has become necessary through the manifold attacks to which man is exposed, and which he would not be able to ward off alone, but only in union with others. This protection of the citizen by the state is delivered on three levels. First, protection from outside forces. First of all, outward protection, which may just as well become needful against lifeless forces of nature, or wild beasts as against men, consequently against other nations. Although this case is the most frequent and important, for the worst enemy of man is man, homo homini lupus. Second, protection from within. Protection of the members of a state against each other, consequently security of private right by means of the maintenance of an honest state of things. And, interestingly, these two forms of protection granted by the state against each other and against outside threats give rise to the need for a third kind of protection, protection from the state itself. Protection against the protector, i.e., against him or those to whom the society has transferred the management of the protection, thus the guarantee of public right. This appears most completely attainable by dividing and separating from each other the threefold unity of the protective power, thus the legislature, the judicature, and the executive, so that each is managed by others and independently of the rest. This is classic trias politica in the vein of Montesquieu, the separation of powers. So let's zoom out a bit and take a look at where we're at. So far, Schopenhauer argues for a limited state which has one purpose and one purpose alone: provide protection to its citizens. It needs to do so on three fronts. First, against outside threats, whether those be neighboring countries or even protection against wild animals or natural disasters. Second, it needs to protect its citizens against themselves. It does so primarily by enforcing private right, which means respecting property rights and making sure that business contracts are legally binding. Of course, fighting crime also falls under this category. Third, by giving the state this much power, there arises a need to also limit the power of that state. In other words, we need to be protected from the protectors. We do so by making sure that we separate the three powers of state, trias politica. None of this is particularly new or groundbreaking. In fact, Schopenhauer would prefer it that way. Like we said at the start of the video, Schopenhauer didn't bother much with political philosophy. He considered it not proper for a philosopher to concern himself too much with politics. But one more element in Schopenhauer's minimalistic philosophy of politics deserves our attention. Interestingly, Schopenhauer believes that a state should ultimately be ruled by a monarch. There's a famous quip that goes around where Schopenhauer says that if he is to be ruled by anyone, he would prefer to be ruled by a lion rather than one of his fellow rats. In other words, that he prefers a king to an elected democratic official. But in the end, that's all this is, a quip. So let's take a look at his arguments for monarchy.